Elite Dangerous has a lot of ships. Too many, in fact. And it can be troublesome to try to figure out which ship you should be using for any particular task, or just trying to find the ship that you want to step into and then never leave. That ship is the Mandalay, by the way. But why not cover the whole roster, and really uncover what the deal is with each addition to it? If you're a beginner, you should know that ships are broadly classified by size and role, and also, more recently, by SCO compatibility. There are 3 sizes: small, medium, and large. Technically, large also has a sub-classification of heavy, but functionally, they are no different. The functional difference between ship size is what size of landing pad they are capable of using. Small and medium class ships can land at any location that has a landing pad, but large ships cannot land at outposts and smaller settlements. Medium ships usually only get 1 landing pad at outposts, and that means you may have to wait on an NPC to leave before you can land, which kinda sucks. Outposts generally lack the better services, and their economies can be fairly weak, but medium-class trade vessels are still able to make profit margins in places that large ships cannot consider. This is balanced out by the fact that a large-class ship can hold loosely twice as much cargo, even more so for the Panther Clipper. As a gross oversimplification, larger ships have higher armor hardness, which gives them a very strong percentile damage resist against smaller hardpoints, with some exceptions. As a rule, you need to use a larger hardpoints against larger ships, which means that the amount of hardpoints a ship carries isn't nearly as important as the size of them. Some ships have better armor hardness than their size would imply, and I'll bring that up when necessary. Hull HP can be heavily modified by having more optional internal slots at Class 5 and below, but the effectiveness of that reinforcement is still dependent on armor hardness. But naturally, for shield health, the whole thing is flip-flop. They don't so much care about what size hardpoint is attacking them, just what kind. A ship's shield health is largely dependent on the shield coefficient endemic to each ship. The same shield on 2 ships of the same weight but different type will have different results. You can easily increase shield effectiveness on ships with more utility mounts, but again, it's modified by shield coefficient. And you can also use shield cell banks, which can occupy any optional internal slot to regenerate shields at the press of a button. Effectively health potions. And unlike hull reinforcements, they don't cap out at Class 5. They go all the way to Class 8. These 2 factors will place combat ships broadly into the categories of hull tank or shield tank. Ships that rely on hull HP or shield HP respectively. And it needs to be stated that for a wide variety of reasons, not the least of which is that shield health is regenerating, shield tanks are considered vastly superior, at least in PvE. Broadly, Federation ships are hull tanks and Empire ships are shield tanks. Some ships are locked behind reputation grind, and those ships exemplify that quality the most. Ships also have thermal properties, a thermal capacity and a thermal dissipation rate, with larger ships having more capacity but not necessarily better dissipation. You can engineer the ship's power plant for a bit more overhead on your thermal capacity by reducing your thermal load generated by passive power consumption, but the capacity and dissipation properties of each ship are fixed. Thermal properties are largely unimportant outside of AX combat, which isn't really done anymore. Exploration ships also want at least decent thermals in order to fuel scoop more easily, but it's a really low bar. I'll mention when a ship's thermals are particularly beneficial or problematic. As for role classification, it's less of an official designation and more of a vibe check. Players look over a ship's kit and consider its application, and then label it based on what it's best suited for. A multi-purpose ship is a ship with no particular weakness, having plenty of hardpoints and optional internals, and good jump range. An exploration ship is one with great jump range, potentially at the cost of everything else. A combat ship is one that has really good hardpoints and utility mounts, generally at the cost of good jump range. A freighter is a ship with basically no guns, but a lot of empty space in the hold. Although there isn't too much use to a freighter if it doesn't also have good jump range. And for SCO compatibility, that's kind of a can of worms, really. SCO-compatible ships are a new wave of modern generation ships invented using technology stolen from Thargoid Titans. The first of them started coming out in 3310, and we've had a steady drip feed of them since then. I'll cut to the chase. Any ship that is SCO optimized is strictly better than any ship that is not, at its particular role. When considering picking up a ship for a certain task, your first consideration should be, is there an SCO optimized ship for this task? And if there is, it's probably superior. The downside of these ships being twofold. 1. You must own Odyssey to use these ships. 2. These ships are only available as a microtransaction for approximately 3 months, after which they become available for credits. Some people have labeled this pay to win. I'm ambivalent on that. But that's enough preface for what to look out for in these ships. Let's dive into the ships themselves. We'll go in order of purchase price in credits, starting with the good old Sidewinder. More like the bad old Sidewinder, if I'm perfectly honest. Containing only small class weapons and no internal compartments beyond Class 2, this thing is genuinely awful at doing everything. Although it is a multi-purpose ship in that it is equally terrible at everything and does not fill a specific niche. Even with all the shiniest bells and whistles on this thing, it's not very good in a fight against a medium or large ship. The only thing to do when you're inside a Sidewinder is to get out of one as fast as possible. The only silver lining is that no matter how much debt you're in, the insurance company will give you one of these free of charge until you're back on your feet, which kind of makes it feel like a gilded prison cell. The Eagle. This thing is technically better than the Sidewinder, but I still hate it. This is the first ship I ever died in because I threw some guns on one and tried to get 10 can bounty vouchers out in Colonia before getting sneezed at by a gunship. It has somewhat better internals than the Sidewinder, but it's not that much more survivable and its jump range isn't really better. If you're going to use an Eagle for anything, it's for racing, because this is the most maneuverable ship in the game and can reach some blistering speeds. If you tear out the seats, outfit it with engines worth several hundred times more than the rest of the ship combined, and basically destroy it. If you want to fly an Eagle, it's probably better to just take a larger ship and then launch ship-launched fighters. It'll feel about the same, and if you die, you can just respawn without a rebuy screen. The Hauler. Don't let the name and the off-brand dealer plates fool you, Commander. This is a real man ship. I love this thing. This is the outer space equivalent of a 2005 Honda Civic. Reliable, cheap, zippy, and useful. Its overall cargo hauling capacity is low, but you can convince one of these things to jump 71 light years with a rebuy cost of only 11,000 credits. And that's with a fuel scoop and shields. I have a small fleet of these things stripped down and souped up as taxis for when I want to transfer ships between stations, because the transfer cost of a ship is based on its rebuy cost. And one of these things can be transferred to Colonia and back for less than the cost of a Diamondback Explorer. It's not a combat ship, it's not even close. But as a ship with such a low price tag and such a high jump range, this will be the ship that makes you your first millions from exploration and exobiology. Without any engineering, merely replacing the E-rated stock parts with A and D-rated parts where applicable, you can get these things to jump over 30 light years at a total cost of less than 400,000 credits, which fundamentally opens up the entire galaxy to you. It's still a snail's pace to an endgame player, but for a new player, I cannot overstate the value this ship provides. The Adder is literally just a hauler with a higher price tag and a few luxuries. The first ship that you'll be able to buy that's multi-crew compatible, it's not bad, but it's not great. It can't jump quite as far as the hauler, but it's marginally better in a fight, being the cheapest ship that can fit a medium-class hardpoint. The Apex shuttle service uses these ships as their baseline taxi, which kinda says a lot. If the hauler is a Honda Civic, then this is a Crown Vic. The Imperial Eagle. You pay more to die faster. Tied for the highest top speed of any ship while having better handling than its competition, this is basically a Formula 1 race car. If you use this ship, it will be for hooning, hemming the roids, and dying in a giant fireball because life is too short to not also be fast. On that note, the Viper Mark III is tied for the highest boost speed with the Imperial Eagle, but it also has a higher non-boost speed, making it the fastest ship in the game in a perfectly straight line, but it doesn't handle quite as well. Despite having the highest speeds, neither of these ships are my favorite ship for racing because you have to strip them down to absurd degrees to actually get that speed out of them. I'm not just talking about grade 5 lightweight life support, I mean, you have to undersize and derate the FSD, and then also cut the fuel tank to 2 tons. A racing spec Imperial Eagle or Viper needs to be towed into position, because you can't even afford the mass to use long-range engineering. You have to opt for faster boot sequence engineering instead. This is the kind of vehicle where the engineers will ask you to take a piss before you step into it, because it'll help with the thrust-to-weight ratio. With 2 medium and 2 small hardpoints, the Viper Mark III isn't actually the worst in a firefight, but it's still tremendously fragile. These things can be really annoying to fight as NPCs when you're in a large class ship, but realistically their damage output isn't a significant threat. They're just hard to hit. The Cobra Mark III is a triumph of engineering at an affordable cost. Being the first ship available with Class 4 internals, this thing has 3 of them, giving it some serious cargo capacity and great customizability. This is the first true multi-purpose ship, and after the hauler, it should be the second ship you purchase. While this ship has no real niche late game, just thinking about a new pilot sitting down in one of these for the first time gives me tingles. It's a great ship that you will eventually grow out of, but it's the first point where you can sit down and say, yeah, I like this one. With a cargo capacity of 64 tons, the cargo racks of this thing could actually fit a stripped down hauler inside, which is funny to think about. Actually, it could fit 2 of them. 64 tons isn't a lot, but it's enough for more than you'd think, and that means it can run honest-to-God cargo missions and trade routes. With some decent hardpoints and a Class 4 power plant, it's the first ship I would actually take into a high-res to scum some bounties from the space cops. Its jump range is not excellent, but at this price point you could just use a hauler for exploration and exobiology, so the 2 ships complement each other nicely. The Viper Mark IV, basically a combat-oriented Cobra Mark III. This ship suffers a lot by direct comparison. Notably, these ships are used by NPC pirates and space cops a lot, and have a pretty strong hull HP. As a combat ship, I can't say I would ever strictly recommend using one, and for all other purposes you might as well use a Cobra. The Mark IV is just one of those ships that exists for visual variety and padding out of the roster for NPCs to fly. It doesn't really have its own place in the player's roster. The Diamondback Scout. An odd little ship, notable mostly for its incredibly cold-running power plant. These ships are best used for espionage and hacking missions. Due to its very high thermal capacity, you can stay in silent running in one of these for a while, and its 4 utility mounts means you can pop plenty of heat sinks to stay that way. Since silent running turns off your shields, it's fortunate that you can make these things into half-decent hull tanks to shrug off incoming fire while making your escape. Unfortunately, espionage and hacking missions don't contain any particularly good rewards, so this ends up being a ship you build to try out hacking as a pastime. I do like it, but it pales in comparison to its larger brother, and it isn't that much better at what it does to be worth building on its own. The Cobra Mark IV was a pre-order bonus for Elite Dangerous Horizons. Few players even have one, and they will never be available again. By all accounts, it's just not great. It has an embarrassing amount of optional internal compartments, but no Class 5s, so why wouldn't you just use a Type 6 instead? I don't own one of these, so enjoy looking at the JPEGs, but its mediocrity has long been a topic of public mockery. Speaking of, the Type 6 Transporter. It's a ship that really looks like a small class, but it is a medium class for reasons beyond my comprehension. Allegedly, it's just a little too tall to fit a small class maintenance bay, but pan your camera out while docked on a medium pad and you'll wonder what the hell Lakon Spaceways was thinking. This is an engineering disaster. In a world with bridges that have 11'8" clearance, Lakon built a transport truck 12'4" high. I'd say that a fumble like this would never happen in real life, but we live in a world with Zip 22s and Cybertrucks, so what do I know? The first truly dedicated freight vessel, the Type 6 can fit about 100 tons of cargo and jump 30 light-years while still having a shield. Those are some good numbers. The damn thing will overheat while charging its frameshift drive, but this ain't a luxury ship. This is basically a cargo bay we convinced to fly. You may end up kind of hating it by the end, but there's no denying the raw function of this ship. It's a transporter, and it does what it says on the tin, and nothing else. The Dolphin is a ship with a cult following, and I've fallen in and out of that cult a lot over time. Technically designed for passenger missions, this ship is actually truly multi-purpose, although I'd never take one into a fight with those two small hardpoints. Like the Diamondback Scout, it runs really, really cold, a property not of its thermal capacity, but its thermal dissipation rate. This means that it can actually charge its FSD while fuel scooping without overheating, but it can't stay in silent running for very long, so it's not great for stealth or smuggling. The Dolphin cuts a very fashionable figure, and its leather seats, hand-stitched by Imperial slaves, allow it to fit in with the Imperial fleet of luxury spaceships. Notable as being one of only 3 ships that can fit luxury-class passenger cabins, but it can only fit one at a time. This makes it actually pretty bad at running luxury passenger missions, since wealthy patrons do not want to share legroom. It is, however, literally the only ship that can handle luxury passenger missions from outposts. For over 10 years, the Empire simply did not make medium-class ships, and even now, the one medium they did make cannot fit luxury compartments. Add in the fact that you can reach a very respectable jump range of over 70 light-years, and you have a ship that's great for exploration and travel, the Jameson crash site data loop, high-grade emissions, light freighting, and bulk passenger missions. It's just a comfortable ship to fly. Its singular Class 5 internal compartment can be used for a Class 5 FSD booster for a bit more range, or a Class 5 fuel scoop to have a fuel scoop one size larger than your FSD, which is basically the standard for an exploration ship to traverse long distances at speed. Which is an excellent segue into its direct competition at price point, the Diamondback Explorer. Isn't it pretty? Maybe that's just me. The Diamondback Explorer is a Class 5 FSD with bits of a ship stapled to it. It is made to jump far. At its peak, it can jump 82 light-years, and for almost a decade it was second only to a jury-rigged Anaconda for the longest possible jump range of any ship. Like its little brother the Scout, it runs very cold, and it even has a large class hardpoint to give it real teeth in a fight. The cheapest ship with a large class hardpoint, to be precise. Its actual damage output is somewhat surprising for a ship of this size and price. This all comes at a terrible cost, however. For starters, this ship cannot freight. All the space being taken up by that massive oversized FSD is paid for in the optional internals compartments. You get 2 of each between Class 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. No Class 5s. This means that while it has a Class 5 FSD, it can't even fit a fuel scoop the same size as its FSD. It can only fit one a class lower. This means that while a Diamondback can jump far, it will take 2 to 4 times longer to fuel scoop, sometimes over a minute and a half. A max range jump will require 15 seconds of scooping to recoup. Minimum. Ain't nobody got time for this. True to its name, it is an excellent exploration vessel, as if you take the time to map the systems while scooping, you'll hardly even notice. But for the purposes of traversing long distances at speed, the Diamondback is deceptively really slow. Its optional internals are also not quite sufficient to fit all of the bits and bobs you'd want for a ship to go out into the black and never come back, although that's never stopped me. It's easy to fall in love with the raw power of the Diamondback, but unfortunately its single glaring flaw is more than enough to mothball it forever, aside from the occasional pleasure cruise. Because, my god, look at the view out of this cockpit. The Cobra Mk V is the cheapest of the new wave of SCO-compatible ships. True to its inspiration, the Cobra Mk III, this ship is affordable and exceptional at all activities. It's fast, it's maneuverable, it has good jump range, it's got good hard points, it can haul some decent cargo, and even do passenger missions and mining. With such a low price tag, newer players will get a taste of what Super Cruise Overcharge feels like without losing complete control of their ship or running out of fuel, making this potentially a better freighter than the Transporter, especially when transporting to locations many thousands of light seconds from the drop-in star. As with many new wave ships, its landing struts are optimized for small landing profile, making it exceptionally easy to land on rocky terrain, giving it a distinct advantage for exobiology. A small-class multi-purpose ship, the Mk V has not revolutionized any particular activity, and I've never personally found a pressing need to use one. However, it is an excellent value if it's all you can afford. The Imperial Courier is a personal favorite of mine. It's also the first ship to be reputation locked. You must reach a certain rank in the Imperial Navy to own one. No two ways about it, this is a racing ship. However, unlike the Imperial Eagle and the Viper Mk III, this ship doesn't have to be completely stripped to the studs to reach a very high speed. It can hit its top speed breakpoint while still having amenities such as weapons and shields and a passable jump range. It's durable enough to hold its own in a fight while dishing out respectable damage. I have several of these ships fitted for various purposes because its top speed is achievable while also having the equipment to actually do stuff. It's great as a dropship for on-foot missions, it's the best ship for wake scanning, and it just feels fun to fly. Its jump range is only passable, however, so it won't zip across the bubble terribly fast. And it takes a lot of engineering to get the best out of these things, and it breaks my heart that it isn't SCO optimized. The Keelback is a medium-class ship. A combination of combat and cargo freight vessel, the Keelback is also the smallest and cheapest ship capable of fitting a fighter hangar. One can think of it as an upgraded Type 6 transporter. But since it now has less cargo capacity, it's actually downgraded for all practical purposes, and at a higher price tag, costing about 3 times as much. It's not a terribly popular ship for human players, but NPCs kinda love this thing, and with its rotating engine blocks, why wouldn't they? If the Keelback is meant to be an armed transport with ship-launched fighters, it won't be very good at that because it has to give up almost half of its cargo capacity just to fit the hangar. If it's meant to be a combat ship, it's not nearly maneuverable enough to have good time on target. With 2 more medium hardpoints than the Transporter, the Keelback could be considered your first viable ship for laser mining. But with such a small cargo bay, I wouldn't really recommend it and would just use the much cheaper Mk V instead. The Asp Scout is a confusing ship. And if you've ever faced an elite rank special ops detachment of these things, you may have grown to respect them, but once you own one and look under the hood, you'll realize it's just about the worst ship in the game. Only 2 medium and 2 small hardpoints, only 2 utility mounts, which forces it to be a pseudo-hull tank, a jump range that is distinctly worse than its brother the Asp Explorer, an embarrassingly low top speed. The best that I can say about this thing is that its handling is good. NPC variants of this ship are patently lying about their statistics, basically cheating the system, being more durable, faster, and more dangerous than any player version of this ship ever could be. There is no reason to ever own one of these. But because I'm stupid, I outfitted one for combat just to show you what it looks like. The Vulture is the most expensive small-class ship. And last I checked, it's larger than a Type 6 transporter despite fitting on a landing pad 1 class smaller, but don't worry about that. This is a Viper Mk IV on steroids. It has only 2 large class hardpoints, which gives it good potential damage against large class ships, while being small and maneuverable enough to avoid fire, and durable enough to survive sustained fire. Despite being small class, its armor hardness is high, which makes it exceptionally durable against other ships of its own class. These things are kind of annoying for taking a long time to take down for such a small ship. Their overall damage potential isn't exceptional, it just has good armor penetration potential. And its very high durability ends up with even NPC pilots largely just using these things as a battering ram. Bringing one of these things into bounty hunting isn't a bad choice by any means, but it's not my cup of tea by a long shot. The Asp Explorer. Fascinating ship. True to its name, the Asp is an exploration and multi-purpose ship. You can use this ship for any purpose and nobody will bat an eye. Combat, mining, freighting, exploration, exobiology. The only thing I'd say it can't really do is passenger missions. With a damn good jump range and decent optional internals, the Asp only suffers by direct comparison to its competition. It has dramatically less jump range than the Diamondback, but it can fit a fuel scoop larger than its FSD, while also having a Class 5 FSD booster. It loses on practically all fronts to a similarly fitted Krait Phantom, except that it can land on planets more easily because it's smaller, and it also handles better in supercruise. A major consideration for the Asp Explorer is also that its retro engines are legendarily bad. This thing takes forever to stop moving for whatever reason. Combine this with a somewhat weak shield coefficient, and the Asp has a habit of crashing on planet surfaces if the gravity is too high, granting it the ignominious nickname, the Asp Exploder. This ship is iconic, and much like the Diamondback, lives in the hearts of all explorers and veteran pilots rent-free. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no reason to use one when you could use a Mandalay instead, and that's kinda sad. The Federal Dropship. You need to be a midshipman in the Federal Navy to buy one of these. This is part of a fleet of 3 ships with almost identical appearances that spawn frequently as NPC pirates to shoot. This ship is designed to be durable above all else. Its high armor hardness and numerous internal compartments make these great hull tanks, having weak shields but taking forever to actually kill. All 3 of these ships kinda suck at doing anything but combat, and aren't particularly great at combat either. The dropship is particularly really slow, and handles terribly. They are kind of what I'd consider to be roster bloat. The big weakness of hull tanks is that damage to your hull does damage to your modules, and a skilled pilot can sub-target your power plant to make you explode long before your hull HP is depleted to 0. I do it to NPC Anacondas all the time. Damage to other modules, especially hardpoints, can be fixed on site using AFMUs, but you can't do this to your power plant, and the power plant is the part of the ship that kills you. Outside of anti-Xeno combat, hull tanks are generally considered trash, and unfortunately, these ships are nowhere near fast or maneuverable enough to cut it in that theater. The Type 7 Transporter, the cheapest large-class ship. Much like how it's easy to forget that the Type 6 isn't small class, it's easy to think that the Type 7 is medium. It isn't. In the modern day, this is handily outclassed by the Type 8, which can fit a medium landing pad. This used to be an okay ship. It's kinda garbage now, though. If you're a Horizon player and can't buy the Type 8, I still consider the Type 7 worse than a Python. This ship has all the failings of the Type 6, but is even fatter, slower, and runs hotter. Transporter ships are well known for hitting critical hull temperature simply for having the audacity to charge your FSD. Its lack of medium hardpoints means it's terrible at laser mining, and it's just not zippy enough for core mining. A professional would not be caught dead in one of these things. It is at best a transitional ship until you get a better one. All of my life, I have searched for a ship that feels a certain way. Powerful like a Corvette, yet fast and yielding like a Diamondback. Now at last, I have found it. The Mandalay. A medium-class ship costing only 17 million credits, in my opinion, this is the most overpowered ship in the entire game. With a maximum jump range of over 90 light-years, the Mandalay has the best jump range by a wide margin, and can handily beat the Anaconda and Diamondback in travel speed, while also carrying tons and tons of additional amenities. If you look under the hood, you may notice that this ship is pretty much just an Asp Explorer, but turbocharged in every possible capacity. It has a Class 6 optional internal for a fuel scoop, a Class 5 for an FSD booster, and then exactly enough additional optional slots for a cargo rack, a shield generator, an AFM, and a redundant backup AFM, a planetary vehicle hangar, a repair limpet controller, a surface scanner, and a Super Cruise assist. Its landing struts are centered, so its landing profile on rocky worlds is similar to that of a small class ship, making it perfect for exobiology. It is incredibly fast, as maneuverable as a small class ship even in Super Cruise, and it even has a window below the pilot's feet to observe the landing zone for precision landings on top of exobio targets. It is the perfect exploration ship. You could not ask for better. If you asked for exactly this before it was released, I would have told you to dream on. But it's not just an exploration ship. Properly fitted with cyto-scramblers, a corrosive shell multi-cannon, and pack-hound missiles, this thing can easily bounty hunt elite Anacondas and Fer-de-Lances, and it can do so with a jump range of over 60 light-years. Well, for about 3 kills, then it runs out of missiles. And if you're willing to shell out for the premium ammo synthesis, it can gib Cyclops interceptors. Yeah, that's right, it can be an AX ship as well. Theoretically, its agility, abundant optional internal slots, and good thermal properties would make it a decent AX ship, but in the current climate, it can't really be tested. It runs cold, it goes far and fast, it hits hard, it can take a beating, and it can fit all the bells and whistles, and it can do it all while costing nothing and being the most SEO-optimized ship in the game. Prior to its availability for credits, the Mandalay was the most pay-to-win ship in the game, and now that it's free to buy, I can only say that if you don't own several of these, what are you doing? If you're a Horizon player, the closest you can realistically get is the Krait Phantom. The Alliance Chieftain. This ship was the preferred spear tip of the Anti-Xeno initiative for a long time owing to its high maneuverability. Having done a lot of AX combat, it never really grew on me. It was allegedly perfect for fighting Cyclops the intended way, by popping their hearts one by one. In the modern day, with AX combat falling into the background, these things are more or less gathering dust. And I always preferred the Crait Mk II anyway. The Federal Assault Ship. You need to be a Chief Petty Officer to buy one of these. If you thought the Federal Dropship was too slow, this is for you. With a very good top speed and handling comparable with the Fer-de-Lance, the FAS is formidable but not competitive. The FDL will deal more damage owing to its huge hardpoint and more medium hardpoints. And it'll do it while being a better shield tank. For raw speed, the Mamba is also faster and also has more damage by a long shot. The problem is that it's nowhere near good enough to be worth grinding the reputation required to own it, and if you're grinding for reputation, you'll already be well on your way to getting the much superior Corvette. I don't even consider the FAS to be a stepping stone, it's just not great. This ship faces really stiff competition from ships that are easily accessible without reputation locks. The Imperial Clipper. You need to be a Baron in the Imperial Navy to buy one of these. A multi-purpose ship that performs like a medium ship but needs a large landing pad. It has great handling and decent speed. Probably best for light freight, odd jobs like high-grade emissions, and a bit of combat. This is one of my favorite ships. It excels at no one thing, but it feels fun to fly, because it's just so maneuverable despite being so big and heavy. Its Super Cruise maneuverability is much better than any other large or medium class ship, being more like a small class ship at FTL speeds. Its fuel tank is bizarrely undersized to its FSD, however, so you'll need to watch out for that. In combat, it doesn't have a particularly high DPS, and while it does have strong shields, it's also kinda my favorite ship to shoot, because when you catch it on the broadside, it's just about the fattest target in the entire game. NPC pilots really don't know how to handle one of these. Its singular Class 7 optional internal gives it a wide spectrum of possible applications, but its jump range isn't inspiring, so it's not much of an explorer. And you will not be landing this beast on the planet's surface without a set of runway lights. For raw function, it also has lost its place in the world compared to the Corsair. The Alliance Crusader. It's a Chieftain with the ability to use a fighter hangar. That's about the size of it. The cost is that it's slower, which kinda defeats the point. This is a ship for bringing your friends out to Thargoid combat so that they can hop into a ship-launched Guardian fighter, so largely it doesn't see wide adoption. And the Krait Mk II is a better option for SLF anyway. In the same vein, the Alliance Challenger is really nothing to write home about. The Anti-Xeno initiative recommends the Chieftain over the Crusader and the Challenger, and all three ships have rather fallen out of favor with the end of the Second Thargoid War. If there is a third Thargoid War in the future, I'd put considerable money down on there being an SCO-optimized AX ship that power creeps everything prior in that specific role. The Federal Gunship is the Federal Dropship, but with 2 more small hardpoints and the ability to use a fighter hangar. It's much too slow to get any real work done, meant to rely on fighter pilots to take out opposition. Put some Cyto-Scramblers in those small hardpoints and load down the rest with Packhounds and a large class multi-cannon with corrosive shell, and you can probably shred with this thing. But it's basically a brick with no shields. The Krait Phantom was for a long time the professional's choice for exploration. This one is actually rusted through because it spent an entire month mapping out the Vulcan Gate prior to the release of the Mandalay. It used to have a jump range very comparable with the Diamondback while having great optional internal compartments alongside, but in the modern day it's not only a worse version of the Mandalay, it is also more expensive. Outside of exploration, there really isn't anything I do in a Krait Phantom that I wouldn't do in a Python or Imperial Clipper. And the Corsair is just strictly better. If you don't own Odyssey, this may be the best long-distance exploration vessel, but it still handles fairly sluggish in supercruise. Its rather large landing profile makes it a patently bad choice for exobiology, but if you are trying to do exobiology, that means you own Odyssey, and you can just buy a Mandalay. Problem solved. The Type 8 Transporter is a new wave ship. Despite having a higher denomination than the Type 7, this is a medium ship that can also hold more cargo. Comfortably holding 350 tons of cargo while having a shield, the Type 8 is the definitive ship for making deliveries or purchases at outposts. It can also slam out most delivery missions with ease, which is great for grinding reputation. The Type 8 doesn't dethrone the Python as the medium-class multi-purpose ship because its hardpoints are pathetic. 5 small, 1 medium. This more or less makes it non-viable as a laser mining ship, and there are better options for core mining. The Krait Mk II. Don't breathe at it too hard or you'll scuff the paint and reveal the fact that this is just a Python with correction fluid rubbed over some bits. It has the same core internals, utility mounts, and hardpoints as the Python. The difference is that the Krait swaps out one of the Python's larger optional slots for the ability to use a fighter hangar and better speed and handling. This makes the Krait Mk II potentially the best medium-class combat ship in the game for any purpose. It was my go-to for anti-Xeno combat, and you can make a hell of a dogfighter out of this thing too. Also, kinda looks like an A-Wing. I love it. Although it is a pretty decent multi-purpose ship, it's pointless to use it for anything but combat because the Python will beat it in every other regard except jump range. And the Krait Phantom is a version of the Krait that is specifically built for exploration, with a much lower price tag. The Orca. This should have been a medium ship. My god, why are you like this? Although the Orca can, on paper, achieve a pretty damn good jump range, it's much too sluggish in supercruise to be used for exploration, and its massive size makes it terrible for exobiology. Anyone who uses one of these ships is only doing it because they like the way it looks. It was designed as a passenger liner, but it is strictly worse at doing that than a Python, at least for raw volume. The Orca is one of 3 ships that can fit luxury-class passenger compartments, the others being the Dolphin and the Beluga Liner. Unfortunately, as a large-class ship, the Orca cannot land on outposts, which dramatically lowers its potential clientele and disqualifies it for Mobigo mines. The Fer-de-Lance. This is a PvP dogfighting ship, the smallest and cheapest ship capable of fitting a huge class hardpoint. Prized for its high damage output and excessive utility mounts, this thing dominated PvP and griefing for an entire era. It's fast and has ridiculously good handling, and paradoxically its armor hardness rating puts its durability in line with that of the Anaconda or Federal Corvette, allowing it to shrug off small arms fire to its hull easily. By fitting a wide variety of shield boosters into the utility mounts and using a Class 4 plasma accelerator, these ships were unbelievably durable and punishing. By using medium-class hardpoints that punch above their weight for armor penetration, such as railguns and missile racks, the 4 medium hardpoints could be leveraged for quick, non-sustainable damage against unsuspecting targets, and the absolute damage dealt by plasma accelerators ignored the high damage resistance that is common in most shield tank builds. However, they leave a lot to be desired for non-PvP combat. They aren't great at staying in a haz-res for very long, always having to return for ammo restock after just a few kills, and against specifically the kind of NPC bounties that you're sure to find, such as Anacondas and other Fer-de-Lances, you'll probably want a Krait Mk II, Anaconda, or Corvette instead. The Mamba is a strange beast, being effectively a racing ship but technically having a decent damage output and survivability. If the Fer-de-Lance is a PvP dogfighter, this is a PvE dogfighter. It's an incredibly fun white-knuckle bounty hunter. While the Corvette is a much more efficient bounty hunter due to its overwhelming damage potential and relative invulnerability, the Mamba is a great choice for pilots looking to flex their raw skill, as to get the most out of this ship in combat, you must push your abilities to their absolute maximum. This thing can move fast enough to maintain good uptime on fixed projectile or short-range fixed weapons with high DPS. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. The Corvette can do everything this ship does much more easily, but if you're in it for the thrill of the fight itself, the Mamba is your weapon. The Python. Although the Python was once a do-everything that you basically never had to step out of, it has fallen a little by the wayside. The Python is a formidable combat ship, although there are better alternatives, and especially these days, there are better ships for hauling freight. The Python has no distinct weakness beyond a middling jump range. I'd never really used this thing for exploration. Where the Python shines is as a laser mining vessel. It has a lot of cargo space, and the hardpoints and power distributor to laser mine effectively and haul around giant payloads of platinum. Unfortunately, laser mining isn't particularly profitable anymore, and the one place where it is done, sourcing tritium for fleet carriers outside the bubble, it's strictly worse than an Imperial Cutter. This ship used to shine as an intermediate distance rescue and cargo delivery ship, but now that's all done in a Type 8, so the Python no longer has a real place in the game. The one thing it's particularly good at is no longer desirable. How far the mighty have fallen. The Python is, or perhaps was, the best passenger runner. It was pretty much the only ship used to run Robigo mines. Bulk passenger missions mostly only cared about how many Class 5 or 6 optional slots you had, and the Python had the most while also jumping 31 light-years at a time. Now though, the Corsair has an even longer jump range, also fits on a medium pad, goes faster, handles better, and has 2 of its optionals upgraded in class, meaning that it can fit substantially more passengers per run. The Python Mk II is a completely different kind of ship from the Python. It has basically no internal compartments. The very first of the new wave of SEO-optimized ships, it's basically a better version of the Fer-de-Lance, but without the huge hardpoint. I'm not going to pretend that I know jack about PvP, but everyone I've talked to says they still mostly prefer the Fer-de-Lance. Old habits die hard, and it's very difficult to get someone to give up a Class 4 hardpoint even if the Mk II is mathematically better. Never mind PvP though, this ship is actually incredible for Cyclops instagibbing. Build this ship right and it can make you over 100 million credits per hour while also grinding some damn good combat rank and never facing any real danger. It may be terrible for generalized AX combat, but this thing seems almost purpose-built for grinding Cyclops into a fine paste. It has exactly enough hardpoints to do it, all the utility mounts you could want for the heat sinks to do it on loop, and is zippy enough in normal space and highly maneuverable in Supercruise. It's unbelievably comfortable to just take a trip out to the Pleiades and fly around stomping bugs. Just make sure to leave it parked there and fly out there and back in a Mandalay because its jump range is abysmal. Clearly intended as a PvP ship, I don't have much to say about it as it's not my bailiwick. The Type 9 Heavy. Prior to the release of the Panther Clipper, this ship had the highest cargo capacity possible while still having a shield. It's a terrible ship by any metric except raw cargo capacity, and practically all cargo freight is either done in cutters or Panthers these days. But for a long time, the Type 9 was built and used specifically for transporting exactly enough power play materials to unlock modules in a single trip. With the new power play system, this ship no longer has a function beyond absolute poverty cargo freighting. This ship is invalidated by the Panther Clipper. If you can't get one of those, use a Type 8 or grind the Imperial rank to get an Imperial Cutter. The Type 9 is the absolute favorite of gankers. It's really fragile and can't maneuver at all. If you haul cargo in one of these, make sure you don't do it in open. You will get blown to pieces. The Corsair. This is the ship that the Clipper was meant to be. And, strangely, you don't need Imperial rank to buy one of these. It loses the Class 7 internal compartment, but it's also a medium ship rather than a large. This is a true multi-purpose ship. Equally capable of insta-gibbing, just like the Python Mark II, and better at freighting and laser mining than the Python Classic. It has less raw DPS than the Python Mark II, but is technically faster in a straight line, and has a lot more internal compartments. It would strictly be better than the Krait Mark II, but its handling is worse, and way worse than the Python Mark II. Its maximum possible jump range is actually quite good, brushing up against 80 light-years fully stripped. It's also perfect for passenger missions, supplanting the Python for best ship to run Robeco mines with. If you haven't gathered at this point, the Corsair is just an upgraded Python. The same ship, but better, and by a different manufacturer. This thing would probably also be an absolute menace as an AX ship, as its 3 large and 3 medium hardpoints, alongside its embarrassment of optional internal compartments, give it the damage and survivability sorely needed for blasting bugs. And it's actually faster in a straight line than the Krait. I suspect this ship would see generous field time in the Third Thargoid War, if it ever happens. The Corsair is also deceptively good for exploration, pushing 80 light-years while carrying all the bells and whistles you'd want for extended self-sustained deep space travel. It can actually jump 74 light-years while carrying 32 tons of limpets, which makes it pretty damn good for high-grade emissions. It's also the ship I'd recommend using to blast brain trees for raw materials. It's an odd ship in that it's just really good at everything, but not the best at anything. It's pretty great at laser mining, but has a surprisingly low speed at which it will annihilate its own prospectors, just like the Python. The Beluga Liner. An absolutely massive ship with even more ridiculously massive tail fins, this damn ship is mostly just good at getting caught in the airlock while being piloted by an NPC. I don't really know anyone who unironically flies one of these. They aren't even good at doing passenger missions. Slow, fat, and dumb with only a middling jump range when not loaded down, this is the ship you fly when you want to remind your passengers that yes, you are in fact in the top 1% of all liners out there. Okay, I was a little unfair. This ship does have a lot of Class 6 compartments, meaning that it can fit a lot of passengers. But would you look at that? The Anaconda can fit more while jumping farther and flying faster. So can the Cutter. The Corvette can fit more passengers, if you can believe it. The Beluga can fit 4 luxury class passenger cabins, which means that it has the monopoly on luxury class only passenger missions, but it's not exactly a secret that luxury passengers are not only really hard to find, but don't pay very well. This ship exists to look pretty at starports being driven by NPCs. It's not worth the price tag or the engineering it takes to make it not awful in every regard. The Type 10 Defender is a bizarre ship, an upgraded version of the Type 9 Heavy that trades cargo capacity for firepower and armor. It has the highest armor hardness of any ship in the game, and also the most hard points, except for the Panther. But it's also the slowest and least maneuverable ship to boot. This ship has a singular purpose, and that is AFK credit mining using ship-launched fighters in a low res. Something I've attempted several times, but to be honest, it's just so overwhelmingly lame that I recommend you don't even consider it. Despite having all those hard points, this ship is simply so sluggish that you pretty much have to make them turreted weapons, which reduces the potential DPS by about half. The Type 10 is the closest to an aircraft carrier that you can manually pilot, in a game where hiring pilots for your fighters actively steals a large percentage of all your money from every source. Don't even think about it. I'm also pretty sure that it's been hard power crept at its own niche by the Panther. The Anaconda. This is the only super heavy class ship worth buying that you don't need reputation to unlock. No wait, they added the Panther Clipper. Oh well. It's horrifically expensive, and it turns about as quickly as a slug through molasses. But it's a true multi-purpose ship by every metric. If you absolutely violate an Anaconda, it can compete with a Mandalay for jump range. But using a Conda for exploration is like running the Nürburgring in an M1 Abrams. You won't make good time, and every turn will cost you a bit of your sanity. This ship is simply not viable for exobiology, as its gargantuan landing profile means that it actually can't touch down anywhere but a designated landing pad without a lot of luck and effort. And an exploration-fit Anaconda will just fall out of the sky, as its undersized maneuvering thrusters are barely able to compensate for planetary gravity acting upon its mass. Another shortcoming of the Conda for exploration and traversing long distances at speed is that its fuel tank is undersized to its FSD. Class 6 FSD, Class 5 fuel tank. This is where a lot of its vaunted jump range secretly comes from. Sacrifice a Class 5 internal slot to give it the 64 tons of fuel capacity that it should have, and it loses 5 entire light years of range. The Anaconda can jump far in a single shot, but its overall range before refueling is dramatically lower than any other exploration-fit vessel. It's not the worst problem to have, since the Anaconda can fit a Class 7 fuel scoop, which is the desired one class higher than the FSD to make refueling quick, but since the fastest way to traverse the galaxy is to use the Neutron Superhighway, and the Superhighway actively rewards going many jumps in a row without refueling, the Conda has fallen far behind the Mandalay as the premier ship for speedrunning Sol to Colonia. It has a pretty good cargo capacity, although it can't compete with the Cutter or Type 9. In combat, its poor handling will make it difficult to evade incoming fire and get good uptime with your weapons. Although for raw DPS, this ship is capable of the highest potential DPS in the game. Potential DPS. Actually getting it to come out can mostly only happen in target practice. If you don't own Odyssey, it's probably the easiest ship to outfit for Cyclops insta-giving, so it has that going for it, I guess. For mining, it's almost strictly worse than a Python or Corsair. It has a Class 8 power distributor, which means it can use the most Class 2 mining lasers, but the ship itself is far too slow to be effective in an asteroid field. Was pretty good for Thargoid rescue, but that content no longer exists. As a true multi-purpose ship, it's useful but not specialized. A blunt instrument that will do any job with no subtlety or elegance. The Federal Corvette. You need to be a very high rank in the Federal Navy to buy one of these. The Corvette is a cult, and I am a part of it. It's exceptionally good at one thing and one thing only: PvE bounty hunting. Its 2 huge hardpoints give it unbelievable DPS against targets with high armor hardness, making it perfect for killing elite NPC Fer-de-Lances and Anacondas, the 2 juiciest targets you'll find in most has-res. To complement its high DPS potential, it also has handling comparable with a medium-class ship, allowing a skilled pilot to maintain very good uptime with those 2 Class 4 multi-cannons or plasma accelerators. It's not the fastest ship, and its handling will still struggle with the most agile small-class ships, but it's not a pain to fly, and that goes a long way. Its Class 8 power distributor is perfect for sustained fire while also boosting regularly and keeping your shields braced, something that the Cutter lacks. Strictly speaking, the Corvette is a hull tank, but with a bi-weave shield and enough Grade 5 shield boosters, you can go out and fight elite NPCs until your guns run dry without your shields popping, so really, how could you ask for more? Even if your shield does pop, you can fit an embarrassing amount of hull reinforcements in its surprisingly generous internal compartments. Or you could be smart and instead fill those slots with shield cell banks. So, what's the downside? Abysmal jump range. A combat-fit Corvette will struggle to hit 30 light years. Its boilerplate description literally calls it out as sacrificing good jump range in exchange for being a good combat vessel. If you own a Corvette, you will also want to get a fleet carrier in order to haul the thing around to the fight. The Imperial Cutter. This ship might look like a yacht, but for like 10 years it was effectively the official cargo freighter of the Pilot Trade Network. A standard configuration cutter with shields could carry 720 tons of cargo while still jumping 31 light years. The smallest shield it can fit is Class 6, which really cuts into its cargo capacity. And unfortunately, if you are using a docking computer, you will need those shields, because this sucker can weigh over 2,000 tons and the docking assist will crash constantly. With shields, it's never an issue, but it is goofy, and without shields, it can be a very expensive problem to have. For freight shipping, this ship's relatively limited jump range, both per jump and overall, makes it much more useful as a tool for loading and unloading fleet carriers. Although it isn't SCO optimized, SCO can still be used carefully to escape the gravity well that slows down transfer of goods between station and carrier, and this has become something of an art form for those fulfilling commissions for the PTN or network-affiliated carriers. For this purpose, and for the purposes of shipping thousands of tons of goods to colonial construction projects, the Cutter has been superseded by the Panther Clipper, falling behind in cargo capacity by approximately 500 tons, while only carrying 700 tons itself. Welcome to power creep. But this ship isn't only good for freighting. It's very slow and its handling is poor, but it does have some decent teeth to it, being able to gib a Cyclops no problem. It's somewhat let down by only having a Class 7 power distributor, slightly neutering its sustainable DPS potential. If you fit this ship for combat, whether it be PvP, PvE, or anti-Xeno, you are doing it because you want to be practically invincible. Its optional internals contain 2 Class 8s, allowing it to hold a Class 8 prismatic shield and shield cell bank. The effective total shield health HP of a properly built Imperial Cutter is ridiculous. It's not particularly effective at combat, but depending on personal preference, its poor time on target and suboptimal DPS may not be as important as being the biggest damn block of hit points in the world. Fair warning, when you have this many points of shield health on a very slowly recharging prismatic, you might still be able to brew a cup of tea on the landing pad before your shields rebuild. But if combat isn't your thing, it's also a damn good laser miner, being the preferred tool of deep space fleet carrier operators for sourcing tritium needed for extended range jumping. Its inability to land on medium landing pads reduces its effectiveness to make a profit from outposts demanding minerals, but if used in conjunction with a fleet carrier's cargo hold, you can mine minerals to deposit for storage, and then move it over to a Type 8, Corsair, or Python for sale in smaller locations. The elephant in the room is the Panther Clipper Mk II. An absolute monster of a cargo freighter, this was made to address all the shortcomings of the Type 9 and Type 10. Currently only available for ARCs, but will be available for credits at some point in the future. I spent 48 weeks worth of my weekly ARCs allowance on this thing, and this video was delayed because it just had to cost even more than any other ship they'd ever released so far. But that's what I get for being too socially anxious to apply as an official Elite Dangerous influencer. If outfitted exclusively with cargo racks, including its own specialized bonus capacity racks and 4 pre-engineered Class 5 and Class 6 racks from getting top 75 in the recent CG, this ship can boast a total cargo capacity of over 1,300 tons. But trying to drink the entire thing is asking for trouble. No two ways about it, this is the best freighter in the game by a wide margin. Patently power creep, and at the moment it's hard to argue its pay-to-win status. The smallest shield that this ship can fit is a Class 6, but it has 3 Class 6 slots, so you still have the space for the 2 pre-engineered racks. It also conveniently has a Class 1, 2, and 4 slot, which are not great for cargo, but are great for fitting a Supercruise assist, a docking computer, and a Class 4 Guardian frameshift drive booster, which I highly recommend. Sacrifice just 16 of our 1,200-ton cargo capacity, and our jump range goes from 23 light-years with a total range of 240 light-years to 33 light-years with a total range of 330 light-years. Definitely worth it in my opinion. Because this is a big boy, we want fat shields, and I recommend filling all 6 utility mounts with E-rated shield boosters engineered to heavy-duty super cap, and putting a reinforced 6A prismatic in the optionals. 3,000 raw points of shield health with only 2 pips into systems will make a ganker think twice about whether you're worth the effort, and maybe even let you survive long enough to hit Supercruise again. because they sure as hell aren't keeping this ship in mass lock. Heavy-duty boosters are best for crash protection. If you're more worried about gankers, then probably put in some resistance augmented. This ship has a hilarious amount of hardpoints. 2 large, 4 medium, 4 small. The most hardpoints of any ship. The recommendations I've seen is that you should use turreted weapons because even with the DPS nerf, it equates to a pretty strong offensive. But actually carrying and using weapons will push you up a power plant and distributor class or 2 and cost you a lot of jump range, which is why I tend to use pre-engineered high-cap lightweight seeker missile racks in my freighters. They don't take much power or distro draw. Of course, you still kinda have to aim them, and in PvP it probably won't go that well. Notably, it only has 2 large hardpoints, which means its DPS against high armor hardness ships is pretty minimal. Its 8 medium or small hardpoints will do some good hull damage against small ships, but practically nothing to the big boys, so putting a bunch of turrets on it is more like equipping a fly swatter than a real weapons array. It can launch ship-launched fighters, but I hope you plan to pilot them yourself, because just thinking about the stolen profits from an NPC pilot while carrying this much cargo is depressing. I'd never want to take these into combat, personally, but it's worth mentioning that the Clipper has the requisite 6 medium or larger hardpoints to insta-gib a Cyclops. The Corsair is just strictly better than this for a variety of reasons, but it's there. There's no reason why you can't take a Clipper mining, but it doesn't have any distinct advantages over the Cutter in that regard. Its awful roll speed may make it more cumbersome to mine in, and it still only has a Class 7 power distributor. For passenger missions, the Clipper prioritizes very large slots rather than an exceptional amount of slots, and passenger cabins don't go higher than Class 6, and 2 of its slots can only fit cargo or fuel tanks. And as a large class ship, it can't do Robigo. The Clipper is the only SCO-optimized heavy class ship, and I don't think I need to put too fine of a point on how important SCO is for freighting goods, especially to locations that are far away or in very low orbit of a planet. For loading and unloading fleet carriers, there is no better option, and refueling your carriers with tritium just got a whole lot more convenient. Let's not beat around the bush. The Clipper was designed to move enormous amounts of cargo in order to pioneer settlements. Making settlements takes hilarious amounts of materials, and even though fleet carriers can move almost 25,000 tons of cargo 500 light-years in about 20 minutes, the bottleneck is and always has been last-mile delivery. The Clipper has reduced that bottleneck significantly. FDev did not need to make these locations cost nearly so many materials, but because they do, you now have a great incentive to buy the Clipper in order to meet demand. The latest experiment in manufacturing a gold rush in order to sell shovels. But I digress. The last ship to be revealed so far isn't available yet, but it's a dedicated mining ship. It's the Type 11 Prospector. A medium class with a specialized hardpoint specifically for mining, we don't know a whole hell of a lot else. Laser and core mining are kind of dead activities at the moment, and the amount of power creep that this ship would need to have over the currently available stock in order to make mining an activity that people would genuinely care about would have to be positively insane. I have no doubt that this ship will become the new standby for refueling fleet carriers, but mining for profit just isn't viable anymore. The last time I mined in earnest was a few months ago, and it was merit mining, an activity that lets you go from 0 to 100 in power play rank in a couple of days rather than a couple years. That being said, that behavior has been heavily nerfed, with merit returns from mining profit in the vast majority of systems now taking a 35% penalty, as well as a bulk sales penalty if you don't carefully sell your wares in small packages. But merit mining is something you do once in your life and hopefully never ever do again, and for there to be an entire ship dedicated to it would be pretty pointless, especially when a Python or Corsair can do it at a perfectly adequate pace. But since the Clipper launched with a month-long community goal designed specifically to reward and be participated in by exactly the kinds of people who want or bought the Clipper, I have no doubt we're staring down the barrel of some mining-based community goal, and even rebalances.